There is no text on this page. Good News for the Alpha Gen by Leslie Simon Falvey, Director, International Teacher Training and Development College. Leslie.simonfalvey@aol.com. Write Alpha in the subject line. I want to dedicate this book to all the LD students, including members of the Alpha Gen, I have been teaching over the years and decades, and also to their parents who have been most helpful. I could have given this book the subtitle on becoming a member of the Alpha Generation, because we, parents and teachers, can only help the child if we realize that there is a problem, how that problem has changed the life of that child, and how it has become an inseparable part of their life. In our learning, teaching, and teacher training, we follow the communicative approach to the language, the humanistic person-centered approach to people, the psychodynamics approach to groups, the total quality approach to educational management, and the principles of the 6-category intervention analysis in interpersonal relationships. Because of the above, we do not think that language should be taught and learned as a set of dogmata, rather it is a living creature that can be enjoyed and that can give a great deal of joy to all concerned. We believe in joyful learning, home joy, joyful teaching that is a helping profession, and joyful teacher training that is the best orientation for a meaningful professional life. We believe in a synergy between vertical learning from a teacher, horizontal learning between students, and diagonal learning between teacher, trainees and students. We believe that learning groups are not born simply by herding people together into one container, rather learning groups have to be made with a great deal of concerted work, have to be continually developed, and have to be appreciated by all concerned. We believe that we can learn, teach, and train best in a warm, accepting and welcoming environment where we appreciate contents and embrace persons, rather than the other way round. We believe that learning and development are life-long and there is no need to press them if they are joyful. A very important note, in the materials that follow, I do not want to tell you how to feel and what to think. Instead, I am simply sharing with you some of the insights, ideas, and skills that have accumulated over the years and decades. If you read this material, and agree with me at some points, it doesn't necessarily mean that I am right. We both may be wrong. By the same token, if you don't agree with me at some other points, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm wrong. We both might be right. I've been right or wrong so many times that I reserve the right to be wrong. Contents: Understanding the members of the Alpha Generation. Notes and comments. Help session: some suggestions to attempt to renovate what went wrong in the early years. There is no text on this page. Question: I have just read a comprehensive summary of what we may know and should know about Generation Alpha, and to tell you the truth, I haven't found any good news in it. Why do you call your book good news? Do you follow some defensive cultures who think no news is good news? Leslie: not at all. I know that paper and I think that its content was state of the art in 2020. The authors may still have some new insights since publishing that paper. Frequently asked questions FAQ: do you agree with the content of this paper? Leslie: I neither agree, nor disagree. I'm not a demographer. I'm a teacher and I have taught a few hundred LD students among the thousands of normal students, and a few dozen Alpha Gen students among the LDS. FAQ: what is LD, and who is the LD student? Leslie: LD is a mosaic word and it has at least 3 readings, depending on your standing in psychology. It reads learning disability if you are stuck at Freud. The problem is not with Freud, but with the person who has not developed since Freud. LD reads learning difficulty if you follow Skinner and his behaviorism. For a difficulty, you need an expert to find the way out. A teacher or a parent cannot be of any assistance for Skinnerians. LD may also read as learning difference if you happen to follow Carl Rogers' humanistic psychology and the person-centered approach. If the student learns with a difference, I, as a teacher, have to change my teaching to fit this different learning. I, personally, think that real help comes through the person-centered approach, but only if/when the helpee cooperates. Help cannot be, and an attempt to help shouldn't be a type of rape. I.e. I'll help you even if you die in the process. There are 100 plus factors by which a person can behave and learn differently from the mainstream. All humans possess one or more of these factors. Some of these factors are such that, based on them, a person may get punished, discriminated against, or ridiculed by their human environment, although what they need is help. These are the LD students in a learning environment. With the arrival of the Alpha Gen, the number of LD students has grown considerably. It is because some of the newly developed factors that are unique to the Alpha Gen are not very well tolerated by their learning environment. For some other factors, we don't get punished, discriminated against, or ridiculed. Still, we may need help. FAQ, could you give an example or two? Leslie, take dyslexia, dysgraphia, and dyscalculia as a small example, which, by the way, affect hundreds of millions of students all over the world. In most countries, education systems, schools, and teachers in those schools call them learning disabilities, or in a somewhat better case, learning difficulties, although these three simply don't exist in oral cultures. The education systems, schools, and teachers in those schools punish them, discriminate against them, or ridicule them instead of creating an oral culture where they can learn beautifully. What is more, they may learn the missing reading and writing skills by backing on their well-developed listening and writing skills. FAQ, what do humanistic psychology and the person-centered approach do with this problem? Leslie, first, we learn the student before we attempt to teach them. We learn how they learn and devise teaching methods with which they can learn better. I believe that this example proves that, in most of the cases, whatever they call learning disability is really a teaching disability, and learning difficulty is really a teaching difficulty. FAQ, what is the overlap between the paper I mentioned and your work, I.E. between a demographer's job and a teacher's job? Leslie, we see a different dimension of the same topic. I do not use problem here because the demographer in your example doesn't see, or at least doesn't mention any problems behind the facts. FAQ, what makes the differences? Leslie, the demographer deals with the grand total picture, while we, teachers, are busy with the nuanced details. The demographer sees generations through statistics. In the statistics the person disappears. Teachers deal with persons and the statistics cannot change or divert our decisions. Generations have histories, individual members of generations have life stories, often very much away from the history of the generation. Generations have unique features, often very much away from other generations. Individual members of generations have unique qualities, often very much away from those of other individuals. Each generation has an earlier generation who preceded them and created an environment in which the new generation could be born. There is no sense in searching for responsibilities here. Individual members of generations have parents who are partly or wholly responsible for their offsprings. Generations are often described as static, with no developmental stages. Individual members of generations develop or deteriorate in stages. Generations have no problems, so it doesn't make sense to talk about, and look for solutions to problems. Individual members of generations have, or may have problems that cry for solutions. FAQ, this duality really represents two different worlds. How do the participants know which of the two they should depend on and take seriously? Leslie, most members of the Alpha generation don't care very much about either of the two different views. They don't live their life according to the statistics that are made by demographers about them, and they see both the parents and the teachers more as obstacles than helpers. To look for, and ask for help, you need to know that you have a problem. Most demographers seem to be obsessed with their own views and rarely search for details deep down, at the level of individual members of the Alpha generation. By the way, it is not their job either. If they do not consult with teachers and parents, they may think that everything is all right with the Alpha generation as they are shown in the statistics. Most teachers feel the problems, but many of them don't look for, and cannot find, solution to the problems. Instead, they find consolation in statistics, of course they behave like that, they are the alpha generation. Most parents seem to depend more on statistics and the final conclusions of demographers since it gives them consolation. They seem to understand their offsprings better, they watch videos 6 hours a day. Of course they do, since they are alpha generation kids. Siding with the teachers would mean that they are, at least partly responsible for the behavior of their offsprings. FAQ, it is not very promising to start with, is it? Leslie, not at all, and a number of other agents may make the situation even more complex. FAQ, what other agents are you talking about? Leslie, besides the members of the Alpha Gen, the parents, mostly members of the Y generation, the demographers, and the teachers of the Alpha Gen, the most important agent is technology, I.E. The laptop, desktop, tablet, videos, computer, games, the social media, mobile phone, and smartphone. FAQ, please tell me more about these. Leslie, okay, but not here and not now. I don't want you to think that I'm against gadgets. The next agent is older siblings of the Alpha Gen. Besides the parents, they may show good or bad examples of using the gadgets. Back in time, well before the introduction of any of these gadgets, we fell in reading and books by frequently seeing our parents and older siblings in a reading position, reading the joy they felt, and wanted it for ourselves. Peers also play a very important role in the life of most members of the Alpha Gen as positive or negative examples in front of them, and as part of the groupthink, I.E. When the peer's opinion sounds more valid and is more important than the parents'. Bullies may terrorize some, or any members of the class and often make it impossible for teachers to create a group. It makes many members of the Alpha Gen feel more lonely and more attached to gadgets. Influencers act more tactfully than bullies, they persuade you into doing what they say they do and into buying things you don't need. It is very difficult to say no, it can be a fashion to follow them. School psychologists may help a great deal, but some of them may label and stigmatize students without examining them thoroughly. Help is rare, many students are removed from classes or schools based on school psychologists' advice/assessment/judgment. Institutes often study generations, some studies are serious and thorough but some others remain on the surface. As an example, one institute accepts the Alpha generation as people who were born between 2010 and 2024 without dealing with the changes that the human and the technical environment make on people. Another found in their research that some mothers give the gadget to their children when they are 1 year old, and surprisingly, the researchers study the child rather than the mother first. The institutes may influence the parents and the teachers rather than the members of the Alpha generation. Media are a real mixed bag about the Alpha generation, and the tons of materials neither deal with the problem nor suggest any sort of help to all concerned. Politics may interfere radically by, for example, taking away the rights/freedom to teach and the rights/freedom to learn. It may also cause trouble by changing the curricula, for example, by making the learning of the multiplication table unnecessary, or by manipulating the use of certain books in teaching. I think it is high time somebody wrote a comprehensive treatise about the members of the Alpha generation. FAQ, earlier you said that you neither agree nor disagree with the content of the paper we started with. Can you name 1 or 2 points you least agree with? Leslie, one is that the Alpha generation is described as a monolithic block, everybody who was born between January 1, 2010 and December 31, 2024, with the same strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats. This definition is questionable, I.E. Some other sources put the beginning of the period to 2005, and it is wrong, I.E. Being a member of the Alpha generation doesn't start with their birth, and it is not the result of their birth in a defined period. Nobody is born as a member of the Alpha generation, all of them are becoming members of the Alpha generation. FAQ, what are they born then as? Leslie, they are born as a normal human being, as a member of the race Homo sapiens. FAQ, why and how are they becoming members of the Alpha generation? Leslie, every generation is the product of the second or the second and the first generation that precede them by this generation, or these generations creating the proper conditions for their becoming. In our case, the Y generation and/or the Z generation created the proper conditions for their children or younger siblings within which they may become members of the Alpha generation. So it is neither the result of evolution nor the result of some changes in the genetic code for them to become members of the Alpha generation, but rather a different human and technical environment in the interaction that makes their brain function differently. FAQ: how does it all start? Leslie, the baby and later a child develops by what psychologists call nature vs nurture, or if we narrow our focus on their learning the mother tongue, nurture and nature. FAQ: so they are not either or, but both. You reversed the order of the two. Why? Leslie, nature, in this context, is not the genetic code that comes from the parents, rather, it is part of the human genome for the baby, and it is the same for all humans. That is the reason why all humans can learn the mother tongue, independently from their nationality, color of their skin, the geographical location of their birthplace, or the target language, and they can learn it from a mother who is not trained in language teaching. The mother, and the mother's genes, come into the picture as the source of the mother tongue. FAQ: what is the key to this very high level of efficiency? Leslie, of the very high number of possible causes, I want to stress 3 that I find the most important: the baby, and later the child, depend 100% on the sounds, and hearing these sounds is coded in the human genome for all humans. The baby and the child don't take notes, don't use memory saving devices. Here, everything is memorized and everything depends on memorization. For a lucky baby and child, learning/acquisition of the mother tongue and total immersion in the mother tongue is 24/7 for at least 3 years, undisturbed. There is no other language from which or into which the baby and the child could translate for a comprehension shortcut. Comprehension must come in the target language. The baby and the child are lucky, their inner monologue is immediately in the target language. The baby and the child's language environment may contain several abstract items, but the language they actually learn/acquire is 100% concrete that can be easily demonstrated to help the understanding. Lucky children will start learning/acquiring abstract elements of the mother tongue after the 3-year basic course that is fully concrete. FAQ: can we go back to the nature vs nurture dilemma? Leslie, I put nurture first because it must be active first. Nature, I.e. The baby's genes are there, but of the two parts only the speaking is active. The listening element is latent, I.e. It is present but it needs initiation by the mother, or other significant members of the baby's human environment. The newborn baby has, through the genetic code in the human genome, the capacity to hear and produce human sounds in the voice, range from 20 Hz to 20 kHz. They can produce the sounds alone, I.e. independently from any source, but learning occurs only through imitation, based on hearing and later on listening, and that is why I reversed the order from nature vs nurture into nurture and nature. Based on the code in the human genome, the baby can produce practically any and all sounds of all human languages, and this repertoire will only shrink to the sounds of the mother tongue by a great deal of hearing/listening and a very high number of repetitions. To sum it up, and it is true not only for learning the mother tongue, but for learning a second or foreign language as well, better speech doesn't come from speaking a lot, but rather from listening a lot and speaking enough. The most important and deepest learning is almost always multi-modal. FAQ: listening is very important, but it may or may not be enough for understanding. Babies, and later children, learn faster and more into the long-term memory if they understand what they hear and what they say. Leslie, that's right. In the first 3 years, babies and children learn only concrete things and actions, and spoken language, if it is not supported by visual aids, situations, and interactions, is abstract. Visual aids help turning the abstract into concrete. Children start learning abstract elements of the language after learning the Kanrit language well enough, but humans keep on learning them all their life. FAQ: can you give a few examples for what happens if the child doesn't learn some abstract elements of the mother tongue in their early years of life? Leslie: there are many, and we can talk about them later in context, but I want to mention only two here. If the learning of the mother tongue is disturbed in the first 3 years of life, the child may not be able to learn the concrete elements of the relevant language well enough to understand the number concept, which is abstract, and the lack of the number concept causes problems later in school. Another example is the lack of a crystallized concept that letters can represent sounds, and strings of letters can represent strings of sounds, objects, actions, and people, and this is the very basis of any further learning. This representation is abstract and can only be explained, and understood, on the massive basis of concrete language. FAQ: none of these elements is mentioned in the demographer's description of the alpha generation, as if you two were talking about two totally different topics. How can you make the reader understand that these are different dimensions of the same topic? Leslie: I haven't found any paper or study that see members of the alpha gen as students, with their joys and problems in learning, but I have found a great many, and will quote here 4 papers that were written by demographers, and that are informers and influencers of parents, schools, and teachers in those schools. These are Understanding Generation Alpha / Mark McCrindle and Ashley Fell 2020 / McCrindle Research Thai Ltd Australia Understanding Generation Alpha / Amrit Kumar Jha June 2020 / Lalit Narayan Mithila University India. A Sitematic Literature Review of Education for Generation Alpha / Institute on Family and Neighborhood Life, Clemson University, Clemson, United States and Department of Psychology, Czech University of Life Sciences Prague / Prague, Czech Republic / 2024 Understanding Generation Alpha, Characteristics, Trends, and Their Impact on the Future / Lloyd Pilipil March 2025 / Pixel Mojo Corporation Manila Philippines. I'm going to compare the two types of description later, in the notes and comments section of this book. FAQ: with this comparison, will we get near a different definition of the alpha generation? Leslie: sure. The demographer's definition is as simple as black and white. If you were born between January 1 in 2010 and December 31 in 2024, you are a member of the alpha gen. If you were born before or after those dates, you belong to a different generation but not the alpha. If, however, you are a teacher, and you have been teaching long enough to see either positive or negative differences in the teachability, and the learning capacities of different age groups, and especially if you find answers to the positive differences, and also find the roots of the problems that cause the negative differences, then your definition will be very different. As an example for my definition, if a baby and later a child can learn the mother tongue undisturbed, with a caring mother who is willing and able to provide the baby and later a child with high-quality language to hear and listen to, and is also willing and able to lend her listening ear to the baby and later a child when they speak, then this child is not a member of the alpha gen at the age of 3. They are not born into the alpha generation, they will become, slowly but surely, a member of the alpha gen, as the result of the combined disturbance by the human and the technical environment. These disturbances may make the child feel that the further learning of the mother tongue is either unnecessary, or impossible. FAQ: does the learning of the mother tongue finish at the age of 3? Leslie: by no means. It may finish there, but it is by no means complete. By about 3, the child's knowledge of the mother tongue is good enough to start learning the world. All their further learning will depend on how well they have learned the mother tongue. FAQ: what do they learn? Leslie: there is no strict curriculum for this learning, because a lot depends on the child's human environment, with mother in the center. They can start learning to read others' body language, and then slowly applying it to themselves to build up their own. Without that, they will have to face problems in socialization in the kindergarten, pre-school, or elementary school. They have to realize and slowly learn another language we use with adults and strangers, and when we want to express a different social distance. Without that, they will have to face problems with their teachers, because teachers, in most schools, use what we call gendarmerie Purtue, a language to show the social/hierarchical asymmetry between teacher and students. They have to learn to understand and then use some basic abstract terms without which, for example, the number concept and the spoken sound written letter correspondence will be stumbling blocks in school. They have to learn empathy that may take a long time because babies are born as egotists and slowly, and often painfully, they have to shrink their ego. They can only learn empathy in an empathic family, with an empathic mother in the center. Without empathy, it will be difficult, or impossible to operate in a group or team, or to build up a caring and sharing, helping society, big or small. FAQ, I have to stop the traffic and ask, learning empathy? Leslie, yes, because for the newborn baby a strong ego is a question of survival. They believe that everybody and everything around them are there to serve them. It may be momentarily true to start with, but it will not always be like that. They will have to learn to care and share, and it is only possible in a caring and sharing family. They have to learn, as a small example, that some of the chocolate necessarily goes to mother and to father and to a sibling. Yes, empathy has to be learnt, and it is only possible in an empathic society. FAQ, how long is this period? Leslie, if these almost idyllic circumstances can last undisturbed till the age of 7, then this child is still not a member of the Alpha generation. They have learned the mother tongue well enough for their further studies because the mother tongue is in the long-term memory for them, and can withstand many of the disturbances that are coming in the next few years. The mother tongue is memorized, and memorization, both as a skill and a habit, is part of their life and part of their learning. We call it 7, because over 7 the school and other societies take over many of the functions from the family. FAQ, where and why do these idyllic circumstances go wrong, and how do they become members of the Alpha Gen? Laelcy, it starts by technology joining the nurture and nature game on the side of the human environment. Here, the technology is not responsible since humans decide on its introduction. First, technology dispenses or supersedes, and ultimately step by step ousts the human voice from the nurture. If it happens after the age of 7, it can be handled and often turned into positive synergy, i.e. It may give more than it takes away, but, sadly, it often happens at a much younger age, and in an extreme case at around the age of 1. Then the synergy is negative, i.e. It takes away a lot without giving anything. FAQ, what do you understand by technology here? Leslie, the common name is gadgets, and they mean a laptop, a desktop, a tablet, a TV, a video, a mobile phone, a smartphone, and video games. FAQ, this is a list of items that are the products of technical/scientific advancement of the past few decades, and without these we cannot, and don't want to, live our lives. Leslie, you are right, and the problem is not with technology. These are, and maybe more, excellent advancement of science and technology, and they make our lives easier and worth living. The problem is with their misuse and abuse. These devices were not invented for children, the inventors didn't have the child's real need in their mind. Tell me, what can a 1-year-old child do meaningfully with a smartphone? I will answer my own question, nothing. They can push the buttons, and touch the screen. That's all. So the child doesn't do anything useful with the gadget, but the gadget can do a lot of harm to the child. FAQ, what kind of damage can it do? Leslie, it takes away mother as the best company, as the best pacifier, and the best source of the mother tongue. It also takes away the time for learning. The idyllic 24/7 is turned into an arrhythmic who knows what. Furthermore, it takes away the total reliance on the auditive, for which the human brain is genetically coded in the human genome, and gives a cheap video replacement, for which the human brain is not coded at all. With this, the long-term memory is replaced with the short-term memory, or meso-term memory. Last, it takes away the urge to memorize as a natural way of learning, and it gives the false, lunatic idea that touching screens, pushing buttons, watching screens meekly, not hearing a human voice, only the beep, beep, beep of the machine is a good replacement of learning. These children don't learn the mother tongue well enough to learn anything else joyfully in the mother tongue. They will still have the capacity to memorize but give up the habit of memorizing. Their listening capacity and their long-term memory will be latent, i.e. hidden at the moment, and waiting to be activated. If technology, or gadgets, are used properly, i.e. at a good time and with a proper aim, or purpose, they may result in positive synergy in the nurture and nature game. If, however, we use them at a bad time and without any aim, or purpose, they cause negative synergy and result in a great deal of damage. FAQ: can we go quickly through the list? And can we start with videos that are often shown to few-month-old babies? Leslie: sure. Auditive and visual, sound and picture, mutually supplement each other, and make learning multi-modal. In these videos, we either don't hear anything intelligible, or we don't see what we hear. There are other problems here, too, namely the producers of these videos change the pictures so quickly that we cannot put either a word, or a comment, or a critical thought between the pictures. The whole thing feels like a neurotic twitch, even for an adult. They try to compensate for the lack of messages by a high number of pictures. The child gets used to this rapid change, and, as a result, anything slower will be boring for them. That is one of the reasons why many children don't like reading. It is too static for them, after some dynamic videos. Reading would fill their mind, but they prefer these videos that empty their mind. This problem is very similar to what we call wants vs needs dilemma in TESOL, teaching English for speakers of other languages, i.e. whether to serve the students' wants/wishes or their psychologically/pedagogically supported, proved needs. The answer to this question is that we must know, understand, and empathize with their wants/wishes, but we must serve their real needs. FAQ: back to the baby and the child who has to learn the mother tongue, what is their real need here? Leslie: their real need is to learn the mother tongue as fast as possible, as well as possible, and for that to hear and then listen to as much of mother's speech as possible when she speaks to them, to be able to speak as much as possible to mother when she listens to them, to see as many visual aids as necessary for easier and deeper understanding, to learn as many meta-linguistic, para-linguistic, and extra-linguistic features of the language in the 3 to 7 years of their age, to learn as much empathy as possible from mother, father, and from other significant members of their human environment, and to use gadgets with an aim or purpose and when they are ripe to them. Anyone and anything who/what violates these real needs, work against the development of the child. FAQ: is it possible to avoid, or get rid of this problem? Leslie: I have had a relatively high number of second, and third, generation students. It means that I was teaching the parent and/or the grandparent, and now I'm teaching the child. I can talk to them, can tell what the problem is and what the solutions to those problems are. I can make them remember how they learned, how the kids are learning now, and explain the differences. When the child is still small, I suggest the parents to fill the child's room for part of the time with English sounds, and this will help learning English later a great deal. FAQ: why is it necessary? Leslie: a newborn baby can hear and say, thanks to the code in the human genome for all members of the human race, all human sounds of all languages in the voice range of 20 Hz to 20 kHz. In monolingual societies, where foreign sounds are rarely heard, babies and later children don't get impulses outside the voice repertoire of the mother tongue, and they don't learn to hear and say these, for them, alien sounds, and it poses a problem in learning a foreign or second language. If we fill the baby and the child's room with the sounds of the planned second or foreign language for certain parts of the day, we can keep this window wider, and it helps the learning of the new language. To this end, I usually send the parents 100, or at request hundreds of, songs they can play to the baby and later the child. There is also a series of videos that teach, in the manner of a mother, new vocabulary very well supported by visual aids. FAQ: what is the next after the videos? Leslie, all the other gadgets with the exception of the computer games because that makes a unique category. FAQ: what is the common element in them? Leslie, they all use the internet to bring good or bad, blessing or curse to the child who hasn't learned how to choose yet. Everything depends on what to use and how to use it. FAQ: please unfold it because it is too vague like this. Leslie, the internet is a gigantic treasure trove where you can find practically everything, if not today, then tomorrow, and it is growing extremely fast. You can find everything and the opposite of everything. Therein it is almost impossible to tell which of the two extremes is correct. You can find everything if you have the proper keyword. Without that keyword, what you find is rubbish because the treasures are embedded into an even bigger heap of rubbish. The message you get from the internet is that it is absolutely unnecessary to memorize anything since everything is there, waiting for you to enjoy without any effort. It is wrong, so the internet is a curse. The other message from the internet is that if you know the proper keywords, don't memorize the details because those are up there, waiting for everybody. It is right, so the internet is a blessing. The internet is an even more gigantic rubbish bin where you can find good and bad, right and wrong, true and false with equal probability, and you need, besides the proper keywords, critical thinking, previous knowledge, and even luck to decide well. The internet gives you something, and without critical thinking it makes you believe that it is important, this is what you need, this is what you have always wanted, and with this suggestion it makes you drop. Memorization as a habit. You will still have the capacity to memorize because it is genetically coded in the human genome, but memorization as a habit is more and more missing. Before you misread me, and think that I'm against the internet, technical and scientific development, I have to stress that the gadgets that represent the technical environment and the human environment are, or can be, in a synergic relationship with each other. This synergy can be positive, helping the learning of the mother tongue, and with the help of the mother tongue, the learning of everything else. The synergy, however, can be negative when it takes away the time from the learning of the mother tongue, and ultimately takes the role of the human environment, thus blocking the learning of the mother tongue, and tracking all other further learning. FAQ: could you give examples for this? Leslie, for more than 4 decades, I've been going through a playground to get my post from the PO box. I love watching the baby mother and child mother intimate relationship, when the mother talks to the baby or the child and teaches the world to them, and the baby or the child listens, speaks their part and learn the world. For the past few years, it is more and more common to see the baby or the child sitting alone silently while the mother sits at the edge of the sandpit or away on a bench and she is busy with her mobile that needs a lot of pushing. The baby or the child, instead of learning the mother tongue, and through the mother tongue the world, learns how to be alone and often lonely. Mother, most probably a Y, or Z, generation mom who is dependent on the gadget, is happy, or at least satisfied, and the child is unhappy, or at least unsatisfied. The child reads this and they want the thing for themselves to be happy, or at least satisfied. The child is not yet in the possession of the gadget, and the gadget has already taken away the mother from them as the absolutely necessary source of the mother tongue. As a positive example, I can mention my kiddie and teenage classes where the students can go to reception and collect their mobiles for the last 15 minutes, and then we learn to use the gadget meaningfully with proper keywords. For beginner and elementary students, the keywords are about the lesson we have just learned, and their job is to find as much as possible on the internet about the topic and then teach it to their father, or mother, or grandfather, or grandmother. For intermediate students and above, the keywords are about the next lesson, and then the students come to class at least half prepared. I don't ban the gadget from their learning, instead I try to fill it as much as possible and give its use a purpose and an aim. A great deal of university research groups deal with the alpha gen. Many researchers agree that the age when the child gets in touch with the gadget is very close to the age of 3, and in extreme cases the baby gets the gadget at the age of 1. I don't really want to give a tip to anyone, but I would first study the mother who gives a gadget to a 1-year-old before turning to study the baby. FAQ: What wrong can a gadget do to a baby and the child? Leslie: it makes them believe that they will find treasure. Since they have found rubbish, they would keep on searching. Their search is not an answer to a real need and the urge is unstoppable. If you don't have a real need, the chance to find something that you really need is zero. It makes them believe that memorization is unnecessary and the habit of memorizing is a luxury since everything is there in the internet. The capacity of memorizing is still there since it is genetically coded, but the habit of memorizing is more and more missing. The skill is missing without practice. The child doesn't learn the mother tongue as well as they should, well enough to learn everything else through the mother tongue ever after. Without the necessary level in the mother tongue, they will not learn the world as well as they should. We usually call it general intelligence and many kids sadly miss it. Among the many reasons for this, probably the most important is the decline in the reading skill and the willingness to read. FAQ: You mentioned it before that hearing and speaking, in language learning listening and speaking, are genetically coded, so every child has a chance to learn them. What is the situation with the two other skills, reading and writing? Aren't these skills genetically coded as well? Leslie: not at all, and I think you use the word skill badly here. All the four are capacities that will become skills as the result of a great deal of practice. Two of the four, hearing human speech and producing human speech, have become genetically coded in the human genome in the past 100 million years for the human race, and with 24/7 practice for about 3 years they become the listening skill and the speaking skill in learning the mother tongue. Reading and writing have only a 6,000 years history and they are not operated by the genes. Even the capacities are not ready for the baby and the child. They need to develop a special way of seeing for the brain, i.e. seeing in the downward direction from a 1-hand distance for both the reading and the writing, and they also have to develop micromotor skills for the writing. Schools and teachers in those schools are wrong when they think that the child can see properly for reading and writing just because they have 2 eyes, and write properly just because they have 5 fingers on both hands and can hold a pen. Even the capacity needs a lot of work and the skills need a great deal of practice. Just compare the facts that every child can learn the mother tongue in about 3 years from an untrained mother, but in some countries about 25% of school leavers are still functional illiterates after about 7,000 extra hours in the elementary school, taught by highly trained teachers. FAQ: I'm sorry for having interrupted the impacts gadgets may make on the baby and the child. Leslie: they give up the habit of memorizing, i.e. to learn into the long-term memory, although learning the mother tongue means exactly that. It means that he has the capacity but the skill has got rusty. The school and teachers in the school don't easily recognize this, if they miss the necessary pedagogical insight, since the child performs well, reports successfully, and gets good grades, all based on short-term memorization. If the test comes again some weeks or months later, they will realize that very little is left in the memory. The gadget can change communication, the socialization, and the emotional relationships within groups. Some groups from members of the alpha gen behave as if they were all suffering from Asperger syndrome. FAQ: what is wrong with computer game dependency? Leslie: it takes away the time, redirects the attention, and sucks up the energy from other important jobs. The gamer comes to class as a dead tired worker who has been digging the garden continuously for 2 shifts, and learning like that makes no sense. In my experience, the parent, the school/teacher, and often external pedagogical help is necessary. The gamer needs help, not punishment or banning. It is important to make the learning meaningful and enjoyable. The gamer needs joy outside the game. FAQ: what is the good news for the Alpha generation? Leslie, the good news is, and now I'm turning directly to the Alpha Gen, that you are, based on your genes, primarily a Homo sapiens, and only secondarily a member of the Alpha generation. If your mother and the other members of your human environment let you learn the mother tongue, and through that the world around you, and they introduced you to the gadget only after that, then you will learn better and will be more successful than you would be without the gadget. If they managed to give a meaning and an aim to using the gadget before putting it in your hand, then your learning would be 3D, higher and deeper, wider and longer than it would be without the gadget. If it has happened differently, and you have lost the skills you had when you were learning the mother tongue, you can be positive that the skills that have gone rusty can come back to normal based on the capacities you still have and you have always had. Your genes are stronger than the forgotten or the newly gained routines. If, for example, something or somebody made you believe that memorization is unnecessary because everything is available on the internet, it is high time to realize that it is false, and learn how to memorize many things based on properly chosen keywords. If something or somebody made you believe that it is enough and comfortable to memorize everything into the short-term memory, you have got to realize that it is false, and learn how to learn into the long-term memory. This skill will be a question of life importance when you study at university, and also in your professional life. Universities and workplaces don't tolerate short-term memory. If you are a victim of computer game dependency, at the end of a busy gaming day, write down on a piece of paper what you have learned during the day and on another piece of paper, the list of the jobs you have had to postpone or procrastinate because you didn't find the time. I guess that one of the two papers will be blank. If you understand the message of the blank sheet, ask for and get help. You deserve it. FAQ: thank you for the conversation. Leslie, thank you for your attention and for your questions.